accumulation mode, then what strategies do I need to be? And do we need to be doing? Now, to answer that, we then need to step back a little bit and go, all right, well, do I need to fast track this? Do I hate my job? I want to move on really quickly? Or am I someone who, you know what, I'm actually quite happy doing what I'm doing, but I need to build wealth? So the switch there is from the engineer that I had in the beginning of Platinum to the engineer I had at the end of Platinum, where he knew that change had happened, and that's okay. So let's have a look at that. Now, I've couched that in Graham 1 and Graham 2. Now, Graham came about when I was in Adelaide. And I was in Adelaide, and there was a guy sitting in the front row about there who I asked him what his name was. He said he was Graham. And I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm an IT consultant. Now, his particulars were this. He had a salary of about $80,000 at the time, and he had available equity in his home of about $250,000. Now, he's just a fictitious person for today, but he was a real person in that real scenario. That is not Graham, the picture I have there. That is a picture of some dude that I picked off the internet. I haven't got a clue who he was, other than the fact that I thought he looked like an IT consultant. So here's my Graham 1 and Graham 2. Now, for my Graham 1 is someone who likes his job. He wants to continue in the job that he's doing. He's quite happy and he's quite comfortable doing that. But in 5 years' time, he might want the option to be able to consider. So that's our Graham 1. So have a think about it. Are you a Graham 1? Is that the kind of scenario that you're in right now? In which case, what would you do? Well, first up, we would target neutrally geared properties or slightly positively geared properties in high growth areas. That's what we'll be looking for, primarily. But they need to be either immediately neutral, or we can turn them into neutral or slightly positive by what we do to the property. Buy as many of them as possible of that style of deal. Now, I call these set and forgets. You set and forget it. Once you've got it, you know, it looks after itself. It might make a little bit of income. It's going to grow. It's going to do its thing. It's a set and forget. So we need to get as many of those as possible. However, with these $250,000 equity that we're starting with, you're still going to have to do some form of manufactured growth. That manufactured growth needs to be continually part of the process, because what it's doing is continuing to top up that $250,000. Because otherwise, if we just do set and forgets with no manufactured growth potential, you'll use up all your $250,000, and then the only way you can continue forward is to sit back and wait for the market to move. And that's too slow. It's too slow and you don't have control over it. So there you sit. And this is where the frustration comes in and the process takes longer and longer and longer. So you still need to be doing, even if you're a Graham 1, you've still got to be doing that manufactured growth to keep that pie, that $250,000 pie that I'm starting with here, topped up enough to be able to get into the next deal or do the next thing. Make sure that you've got that momentum going. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes? All right. Then the plan would be, in a point in time, 5 years, 10 years, whenever he decides that he really wants to pull the pin, we're going to sell down some of those properties, we're going to pay down debt on the rest, and we're going to have our passive income. That sound fair? So what kind of properties would we buy? Well, let's start with this one here. Now, these are all real properties that either students have done or that I've used in the Millionaire Makeover in the last month or so, that are real deals, okay? So what I've done is, even if you've been to super conferences in the past, and I've talked about Graham 1 and Graham 2, all these deals are different, because what we're looking at now is what can we do today to make that happen. So this deal is an example. What is it? It's $330,000. Now, it's in Blacktown, so we're talking Sydney, so Western Sydney. It's a nice little property there. We've got it on, a 600 square metre block. Now, what does that tell me in Sydney? What are my possibilities in Sydney? Granny flat. Okay, so Sydney, rents are in demand, rents are high, we're close to schools, we're a good position, all of that kind of stuff. We're on a nice little corner block there, we've got good access, we can see we've got plenty of room for a granny flat. So it says or near offer. So in my figures, I've actually calculated a little bit of negotiation in there as well. So let's build this granny flat on there. Okay, now that granny flat is a 2-bedroom granny flat, and it's one of the granny flats that actually I think it's one of my ultimate students actually promotes, and he builds them and does them and whatever else. And in Sydney, he'll do them for $100,000 in your backyard. So, $100,000. So what do our figures look like? Well, let's have a look at it. Let's say we negotiated. Now, I didn't do much of a negotiation there. Could have probably got it for less than that, but I've been conservative. Let's say we've got only negotiated $10,000 discount in the price. So our purchase price here is $320,000. Now that means if I go and get a 90% loan. Now the reason I've gone 90% in this little example here is because his salary is $80,000, which is okay, but it's not huge. So let's get as much out of his situation as we can. He's got $250,000 and I need to get him, to this position as quickly as I can. So let's use up as little of his equity as I can as well. So we've gone for 90 first up. And in Sydney, it's a good area, you'd be able to get 90. So a 90% LVR I've gone for, which means he's paying mortgage insurance in that, but provided after paying off the mortgage insurance, etc., and his repayments and all the rest of it, this property can still be positive, that's okay. So in this example, that would mean he's borrowing $288,000 to buy that property. Now, his purchase costs I've calculated at 6%. He's going to need that money. So the first column of the figures, this is how much cash he's going to require to do the deal. Does everybody understand the slide? Yeah? All right. So our 6%, that gets us our trust and our legal fees and our stamp duty and everything else covered. We're going to do a little cosmetic renovation. Now, when Ian does his renovation section at the boot camp, we talk about 9% being the cost of a rough idea for a cosmetic renovation. So let's do a cosmetic renovation on the house, which gives me there $28,800 is going to cost me. So that's extra money he's going to need out of his $250,000. Then we're going to put a granny flat on. Now, he's going to need that $100,000 to put the granny flat on. He can revalue after, but he's going to need that money up front in his line of credit ready to be able to do that. So we can only do one deal at a time in this scenario because he doesn't have enough equity available to do two at a time. If he had double the amount of equity, he could do two of these at the same time. But in this case, no, he's only got the available equity for one, so we'll put the $100,000 in. So out of his $250,000, he's used $180,000. Is everybody still with me? Okay? So our total cost on the project is $468,000. Now, granny flats generally don't add a lot to the valuation of the property. You might get a bit of a markup, and in this case, we've got a little bit of a markup because we renovated the house and we added a granny flat. Now, I've been a little bit conservative there with a $500,000 reval. He might have got a $550,000 reval, but he probably wouldn't have got much more than that. So I'm going to say, let's say he got a reval of about $500,000. Now, if he goes for 90 again on that, which I've sort of played it each way here, if he went... he could probably get $550,000 and get an 80% reval. I'm going to go lower and go $500,000 reval, and we're going to do a 90% LVR on that. So what we have there is a $450,000 borrowing. Now see here we've spent $468,000. So this property has cost us some of our pie, hasn't it? Yeah. So some of our pie, when we look at the reval, we pay out the existing loan, then we put back the money that we used, because that was the $180,000 we used over here of our money, etc. So we're out of pocket $18,000. Everybody happy with that? That's money. Well, it's not out of pocket. We've invested $18,000 into this deal.
From just the standard residential purchase, the splitters, and now doing commercial blocks. We got the 5-storey 14-unit development that we're now doing as well. So just our attitude to the types of purchases, the type of property that we're looking at has certainly changed. And that's just been that progression. Maybe 2 years ago we weren't ready, or we were just stuck in that rut. So in this 2 years we've certainly moved ahead on that. It'll all be different, but we've just found her so good. Her generosity with time is, I just can't express it. It's been great. Now we're starting to and try and educate our children. Just the other week we've purchased a property with our youngest son. We'll kind of go into a joint venture with him, and more from a training point of view, education point of view, so that it'll end up being a splitter, and then we'll put a couple of dual occupancies on it. But it's really the education for him as we progress. So, again, that's 12, 18 months ago, we wouldn't have even been considering that.